Okay, Archie, you're going to welcome everyone and begin the meeting.
Welcome everybody on board. Appreciate your spending some time with the Funeral Consumers Alliance of Northern New Jersey with Bob Brinklin as president, and you've got Clara as our hostess extraordinaire, and Chris Palmer to present the program. I know I owe you a treasurer's report. I broke my hip a week ago and I pinned together a week on last Sunday. So I don't have access to those amounts, but there's about $35,000 that is available. You've been generous, and that's what makes the operation go. Remember, none of us on the board earns any money at all. Clara earns every bit of what we pay her, and she doesn't charge us anything to what she's worth. Over to you, Bob.
Well, is Bill Slezak here today, or he has yet to arrive? Okay, well, the next step, as you can see, is the election of our candidates, our slate of candidates for the 25-26 year. Anyone who's on the call today, who's a member or a guest, is welcome to nominate themselves right now for a position on the Board of Trustees. The term runs, as I said, from May 1st of this year to April 30th of 2026. Currently, Clara, could you pull up the slate of candidates? Okay. That's it. Okay, there we go. We have Treasurer Archie Palmer, Vice President Jerry Fierst, Sherry Haber, Linda Kempner, Bob Rinklin as president, and Bill Slezak. Is there anyone else who would like to nominate themselves? 10, 9, 8, 7. It's a great organization. We definitely need more volunteers.
You are needed. All of you are needed. Bring your talents, please.
Yeah, we're trying to balance to deliver value to our members, but we could use some more hands. So I gather that what we're going to do here is the slate is as it is. If you want to nominate yourself, please put your name in the chat. I see there may be something in the chat already. Otherwise, we will just raise your hands and agree to the current slate. All say aye to the best of their ability. Thank you. Okay. That pretty much concludes the annual meeting. The results is the current board is going to stay the current board. We do need volunteers to help us with a bunch of different projects, including helping us continue to renew, revise, and update our website, advocate with officials about death and dying issues, which our speaker, Chris Palmer, is going to talk about. And let me now switch over to introduce Chris Palmer to you all. I'm not going to read his 2-page, 500-word bio, but Chris Palmer is an author, speaker, wildlife filmmaker, conservationist, educator, professor, and grandfather. He has dedicated his professional career to conservation, but now devotes his life to end-of-life activism. Bloomsbury recently published his 10th book titled Achieving a Good Death, A Practical Guide to the End of Life. It was published in October of 2024. He is a trained hospice volunteer, founded and runs an aging, death, and dying group for the Bethesda metro area village. Here comes a group of organizations that he's involved with. He serves as vice chair of the board of the Montgomery Hospice and Prince George's Hospice, is vice president of the board of the Funeral Consumers Alliance of Maryland and Environs, and serves on the Advisory Council for the Maryland Office of Cemetery Oversight. He also serves on the board of the Final Exit Network, which is an amazing organization. I encourage you to look at their website, and is vice president of the board of the Hemlock Society of San Diego. He is on the Bethesda Metro Area Village Board, and until recently was a board member of the Funeral Consumers Alliance, that's the national organization, and the Green Burial Association in Maryland. Chris and his wife, Gail Shearer, created and funded the Finishing Strong Award with the Washington Area Village Exchange to encourage villages to hold more discussions about end-of-life issues. WAVE is the largest regional village organization in the nation. Just a little bit about Chris' background. Born in Hong Kong, Chris grew up in England and immigrated to the United States in 1972. He is married to Gail Shearer and is the father of three grown daughters, Kimberly, Christina, and Jennifer. He and Gail have endowed a scholarship for environmental film students at American University to honor Chris's parents and encourage the next generation to save the planet. Please welcome Chris Palmer, our presenter, and please look on Amazon to purchase his book, which is an enormous resource. Thank you. Chris, please begin.
Thank you so much, Bob. As a lovely introduction, and I appreciate it very much. And I'm so honored to be here, and I'm very grateful to you, Bob, and to Archie, and to Jerry, and to Clara for having me here. This is my latest book. Achieving a Good Death, a practical guide to the end of life. And if you do buy a copy, if you do buy a copy, I just want you to know that all the proceeds from my books, including this one, go to fund scholarships at American University, where I was a professor for 14 years. Now, this book contains a lot of information. So when I was invited to give this keynote speech, I was thinking, what am I going to do? Because there's a lot in this book, and it falls into three big buckets, if you like: before death, death, and then after death. So before death, this would include things like living well to die well, death cleaning, advanced directives, dementia riders, ethical wills, and caregiving. That's all in the bucket sort of before death. And then death, the bucket of death itself, that would include palliative care, hospice care, end-of-life doulas, end-of-life options, stopping life-sustaining treatments, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, or VSID, medical aid in dying, palliative sedation, final exit network, and Bob, thanks so much for plugging that, and the Swiss option, SARCO, and so on. So that's one bucket. Another, and then the third sort of bucket is after death, and that obviously includes body disposition, green burial, human composting, alkaline hydrolysis, funeral planning, obituaries, eulogies, and mourning and grief. All those things. So there's an awful lot in this book. So I was thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to, talk about this book when it covers so much ground? Okay, so what I decided to do is I've decided to pick out three random topics from those three buckets. The ones I picked were ethical wills out of the first bucket, before death, hospice out of the second bucket, death itself, and then the third topic, green burial, out of the third bucket. So I'm going to talk about those three topics, and I'm going to stop every 5 or 10 minutes for questions and comments. So please, I encourage you to get a piece of paper and pencil, and as you think of an idea or a question, write it down. Don't forget it, so you can ask me when I stop. I want this to be very interactive, and I hope you'll ask me lots and lots of questions. You can ask me any question on anything to do with death and dying and aging and old age and so on. You can ask me anything you like, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. But I want to start with a fundamental question, because some of you may be seeing this book, or the front page, the title of this book, and saying to yourselves, well, that title makes no sense, because how can death ever be good? So what does it mean, achieving a good death? So that's a very good question. What is a good death? So let me start. Let me start by just talking a little of answering that question. What is a good death? So a good death is, and this is going to sound kind of silly, I suppose, but a good death is the death that the dying person wants. It's dying is deeply personal and subjective, and aligned with the desires and values of the dying individual. But for most of us, a good death is gentle, peaceful, free of pain and suffering, and full of grace and dignity. The dying person is surrounded by their loved ones. They're at home. They have a chance to say goodbye and thank them, and hears from those present how much the dying person's life meant to them. The room is full of loving exchanges, expressions of tenderness and gratitude, perhaps even joyful reconciliations where people, forgive hurts, past hurts, and shared memories of a well-lived life. Okay, so a good death is characterized by doctors telling a patient honestly that death is near, so that the patient can say goodbye to loved ones. It drives me crazy. So many doctors are so scared of death and talking about death with their patients that they don't say when death is coming. And so the patient dies without ever having a chance to say a proper goodbye. And talking openly about death's inevitability does not make it more likely to happen, just like talking about sex education doesn't make it more likely you'll get pregnant. Instead, talking about death and dying allows patients to complete their lives with grace, gratitude, and expressions of love and appreciation, and focus on what matters to them. A good death finally means being prepared to die, having few regrets. I wouldn't say no regrets, because we're all human, we all have regrets, but having few regrets, and having one's affairs in order. It means to have one's advance directive followed, and to be able to die when one wants to. Above all, a good death means the dying patient controls what's happening to them and their choices. So let me pause for a second, and I've got the chat room open, so I'm looking at it, and I don't see any questions there yet. Anybody want to wave their hand and get my attention for a question or a comment? Yes, Bob Rinklin. Bob, yes, please go ahead.
I know that Nikki, my wife, is reading portion of your book this morning, and a section of it struck me. And you said how you live your life may influence how you die. Like if you were a grumpy, terrible person, you may have an ending that you don't like, and if you were an agreeable, nice person, you may have a nicer ending. Is that a theory? That's a point of view, or how did you draw that conclusion?
I drew that conclusion, and Bob, that's a good question. And please thank Nikki for reading the book, your wife, and reading the book. I see Nikki there in the background. Hi, Nikki. Uh, so I got that idea that if you live well, you're more likely to die well, from hospice nurses. I'm very active in hospice. I'm the vice chair of the board of Montgomery Hospice, and I'm a volunteer, hospice volunteer, and so I work a lot with hospice nurses, and I learned from them. They pointed out to me that when people live a good life, and by good life I mean a good life where you are giving, you have good friends, you're a person of integrity, you're not just a person who takes all the time, but you help other people, you're devoted your life is devoted to helping other people, your grandchildren, whatever, whoever, And so if you live a good life, then what hospice nurses told me is there's no guarantee, but you're more likely to die well. So Bob, that's where that comes from. But you'll find this is this idea that to live well, to die well, is pretty much viewed as sort of common sense by people who are close to those who watch a lot of people dying. So thanks for that question. Okay, so let's press on. Oh yeah, Bob, you have a follow-up?
Relate to the topic we just asked, but I know that when I heard one of your presentations, I think to the Hemlock Society, and you've been talking about some documents, you talked about an ethical will, and I thought that was an incredible thing that you shared about the ethical will. And if this is the wrong time to talk about it, you can maybe talk about.
I'm going to actually talk about ethical wills in a moment, so I'll do that. Yeah, thank you, Bob. Thanks for that encouragement. Good. So, any other questions at the moment? Please, okay. So, Kerry Yazuta says, "Do you include near-death testimonies as you prepare for death?" So, Kerry, I am a secular humanist. I am a radical atheist. So I find near-death testimonies to be very suspect, and full of bullshit, and most of them don't stand up to any rigorous examination. But many people find a lot of comfort in them, and so if you are a believer, if you are religious, if you find near-death testimonies to be comforting, I encourage you to take advantage of that. But I do not give them much credence. And I realize in my saying this, I've probably lost half my audience here who are now going to stop listening to me. But anyway, I've said it, and so Kerry, thanks for the question.
And thank you for your feedback too.
Yeah. You're so welcome, Kerry. All righty. So let me now talk about. I remember I've talked about I've picked 3 random topics, and the first one was the one that Bob mentioned, ethical wills. So when let me take it back to March of 2020. COVID was starting. You remember all this? We were stuck in our homes. And what I decided to do was to write a letter to my loved ones. So I wrote a letter to my wife, Gail. I wrote a letter to my 3 daughters, and I went on writing these letters to about 60 people in total. These letters were 5 or 6 or 7 pages long. They described why I love them, why I cherish them, what they meant to me. It relayed some of the stories that we shared together and things like that. And when I'd done this, when I was doing this, I was realizing that I was actually writing an ethical will, because an ethical will is a love letter. An ethical will is a love letter, also called a legacy. An ethical will is also called a legacy letter. And so an ethical will or a legacy letter is a letter where you put down in writing to the people who are going to survive you, so that your children, grandchildren, nephews, nieces, neighbors, friends, you say to them why they are so precious to you, what you hope for them in their lives. You might talk about your own values. You might talk about your own grandparents or parents' stories from your life. You might talk about anything is very important in towards you, and they address an ethical will or a legacy letter. Really fundamentally addresses 2 questions. What did my life mean? And did my life matter? 2 fundamental, incredibly important questions. So writing an ethical will means leaving our knowledge and wisdom for future generations. That's what you're doing. It involves discovering what is it about ourselves that we value and think is worth preserving. That's a jolting question. What is it about ourselves that we think is worth preserving? So putting our hard-earned life lessons and wisdom in writing in the form of an ethical will is, I think, an essential component of being able to die well. Because when you're on your deathbed, you can think more. You can say to yourself, well, I said what I needed to say to my son or daughter or whoever you've written the letter to. Because don't forget, we die twice. We die twice. We die when our bodies perish, when our hearts stop beating, our brains stop functioning. But we die again when the last person who remembers us dies. We are then truly dead. And an ethical will alleviates the pain, mitigates the pain of both of those deaths, the sting of both of those deaths. They give us peace of mind as death comes closer. We're more likely to have a good death if we've written an ethical will, because we'll have a sense of completion and fulfillment. So let me pause there. It is 2:21. We've got a lot of things to go, but I want to pause now for questions. And I'm looking in the chat. Gary, Gary Shirk is here. Hi, Gary. How wonderful to see you. Gary's a friend of mine. He's on the board of FCA, and so Gary, say you write in the chat. I'm here. I have, of course, something to ask. By the way, the die twice came from, and I can't read that
Well,
word.
I didn't quite finish that. I heard it. I'm, I don't want to dominate this speech, but I'm grateful I found you, Chris. And I know Archie, by the way. So I'm grateful to be part of listening to Hugh and meeting people in New Jersey. But I heard that I'm back to you being an ethical humanist. I'm 88, or be 88, and I'm a recently reconverted Roman Catholic. But the priest at a recent funeral, I've been going to funerals, used that die twice, and it's really universal. I mean, there's so much religion that is not in anybody's bottle. But he said and spoke to the younger kids, the grandchildren, that we do die twice. We die once, and then we die when people stop remembering us. And I think that's so appropriate.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, Gary, thanks so much. And I appreciate you saying that. That's a lovely. And Robert Bob Rinklin says, what event, circumstance, or issue motivated you to become deeply involved as an advocate for the dying and death? Bob, thanks for that question. The answer is that I became involved because I'm now 77. When I was in my 60s, I realized that death was up until that time. I thought death was what other people did and didn't affect me at all. But when I got into my 60s, I realized that I was getting older and the death, I had to confront it. And I realized I was incredibly scared. I was incredibly frightened and of it. And I decided that instead of going to therapy for that, I would instead confront it. So I confronted it. I read books about it. I talked about it. I started giving talks about it, and I became I became devoted to a goal, which was that I wanted to die well so I could show my three daughters who would be facing this themselves in 30, 40 years. I wanted to die well so I could set a good example for them of how to do it, how to have an effective, how to have a peaceful, a good death, a peaceful death. So Bob, I hope. And then by the way, also Bob, I watched my parents die and my three brothers die. They all had horrible deaths, painful, just I'd give the death the sort of a C minus. I mean, it was just terrible, painful and lonely, and I just don't. And I was ashamed of what happened there with my parents and family, and I did not want to. I wanted to change that in my family. I want future generations of my family to know that it's important to know how to die well. So Bob, I hope that's answered your question. Betsy Gaddy Betsy says, by the way, I love these questions, so please keep putting them in the chat. This is great. Any suggestions for talking about these matters with our loved ones who may be rather squeamish or prone to the American habit of avoiding the subject of death? Yes, Betty, such a great question. So I've got some advice on that. By the way, there's much in the book on that topic. So I think the way to do it is to say to them, here's 3 or 4 different ways you could approach it. One is to ask for help. You could say to them, look, I know you don't like talking about death and dying, but I need your help because I'm going to die. I'm going to die like everybody else, and I need your advice and guidance on this, and what you think about it, how So that's one way. Another way is to say, hey, Mom, you remember how Grandpa died? He would remember he was screaming out in pain and so on. What was your reaction to all that? Did he ever talk about this? Did you ever talk? Please tell me your feelings about that, because I'd like to know your reaction to it, because it scared the hell out of me. And I was, what was it like for you, and how do you want to be different for you, Mom? So that's another way to do it. Cite an example, So there are various ways. And you'll find more in my book, more examples of how to approach people about this. But it is tricky. It is tricky, Betty, when you have people in your family who don't want to talk about death and dying, don't want to talk about advanced directives, and so on. And how do you deal with people like that? Is it tough? Clara asks. Clara Jenkins. Hi, Clara, who's the underpaid staff person with your group. So that's great, Clara. Thank you. So Clara writes, is it ever, quote, too early, end quote, to start preparing for a good death? No. It is not ever too early, Clara. Clara, it's because a good death is influenced by what you do as a teenager and in your 20s and 30s. And one way to achieve a good death, one thing in that is to, as I write in my book, and I've already discussed earlier, is to live a good life. So in your 20s and 30s, you want to start thinking then about what's going to make me, when I'm 70 or 80, looking back, what do I have to do to look back and look back and think I had a good life, a satisfying life, a fulfilled life. I did my best with this short life I've got here. With our 80 years short life, 80, 90 years we're here, did I do my best? So it's never too early to start preparing and thinking about. And one of the themes in my book, is that a good death helps you to live well. Thinking about death, realizing you're not going to survive, and that your life will come to an end. I'm sort of encourages you to think about, well, I'd better live well now. I'd better put everything I can into my life now, because this is the only life I've got, and I've really got to really think about, what do I have to do to live a fulfilled, meaningful life, a life of meaning, and I'll tell you right now, the answer to that is to help other people. That is the key, the fundamental key to a good life, is to help other people. Okay, so Shari says, looking backwards, as you described, has been called a pre-mortem by some. Yes, as opposed to a post-mortem after you die. So a pre-mortem, it's a very good word. And Shari, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's a nice way to look at it. And we need to do that. Okay, so Jerry says, I am a funeral celebrant. That's great. And a sidebar to the ethical will is planning your funeral ceremony. Jerry, I absolutely agree. And you, continuing with your question, you write, I have written and celebrated funeral ceremonies for the full diversity of kinds of people, including Academy Award winners and Wall Street Journal columnists. This is great. And I've always been surprised that even for all of us, especially in the US, though our financial estates might be in order, we have not made any arrangements for what one wishes to celebrate our life. Yeah, Jerry, thanks so much for pointing that out. Yeah, we need to. I've got lots of handouts for you, by the way, which I'll send you afterwards. Clara, should I send to you? If I send you, Clara, some handouts, will you send them on to everybody?
Yes, please send them.
Great, thank you so much.
I'll put my email in the chat.
What's that?
I'll put my email in
Yes.
the
Oh,
chat.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And so back to Jerry's question. By the way, it's so interesting to learn this about you, Jerry, and good for you. And you'll find in my book, and I'll send it to you, what I have prepared for my memorial, my memorial service. And it's very important to do it because when you die, especially if you die suddenly or you never talk about it, your loved ones don't really know what you want. So they'll be saying, God, what did Chris want? Did he want to, so I've written it down in great detail. I want a green burial. Here's what I want you to say. Here's the songs. Here, I've written it all down so that my daughters and my wife, Gail, will so they can spend their time grieving for me and celebrating my life instead of worrying, what should we do? And having to be fret and stressed about things like that. So, so, um, yes. So, Jerry, your observation is very well taken. That so many successful people, Wall Street Journal journalists, Academy Award winners, brilliant, successful people in life have often failed to do the most fundamental, most obvious thing to help their loved ones when they die, to write their memorial service, to say what they want in their eulogy, to say what they want in their obituary, to write an advance directive, to prepare a dementia rider, all these things. It's really funny how people tend to do that. Okay, to Linda Klempner. Hi, Linda. Linda says, but on that subject, how do you calm down the family to listen and not go into denial? I think so, Linda, I think you're going back to that subject that we talked about a little earlier, about talking. How do you talk to people, family members who don't want to talk about it? I think what you do is you ask for help. You ask for help. You say, I need your help. I know you're uncomfortable with death and dying. I know you don't want to talk about it, but I need to talk about it with you because I need your help. What you think is incredibly important to me. So please help me. And so I think that's all you can do, and hopefully that'll lead to them calming down and talking about it. And what I often find is that when people start talking about it, they actually begin to enjoy talking about it. They are curious about it. They want to learn about it, but they don't realize that because they're so scared of, like I was, of death and dying. Okay, so let's press on. I now get into the second topic I picked out at random, and this is hospice. So all of you know about hospice already, so I'll keep this brief. Most of us in the US will die of chronic diseases. 80 to 90% of them will die of slow chronic diseases that will eventually lead us to consider hospice. And hospice is a wonderful thing. I'm very active in it, and hospice care, as you know, takes care of patients, helps them to live fully until they die. It helps them to have the best quality of life possible for the time they have left. So hospice, you're only eligible for hospice if you have only 6 months or less left of life expectancy. By that time, trying to cure the disease is no longer an option, so efforts to cure are replaced by comfort, care only. Hospice care is designed to relieve suffering, optimize quality of life, and help patients live well until they die. And the great paradox, Atul Gawande pointed this out in his book on mortality. The paradox about hospice, it can sometimes help people live longer than if they had selected surgery or chemo or radiation, and it helps them to live longer. So those medical interventions can sometimes shorten your life. So that's something really to think about. So hospice is not a fast track to death, as we saw with Jimmy Carter and Art Buchwald. The patient is not giving up on life. They are simply choosing a smoother, gentler ride for the journey and living the best life possible until they die. Now, so hospice helps patients and their loved ones, and caregivers, not just physically but emotionally and spiritually and in other ways. And this is because hospice gives you a team of people to support you: doctors, nurses, social workers, interfaith chaplains, volunteers like myself, bereavement counselors, and complementary therapists. So hospice offers a wide range of services. Okay, before I finish on hospice, I want to point out that hospice does not give you 24/7 care. And so even with hospice, as good as it is, you still have there's a lot of onus, a lot of burden on the family or friends, because the changing diapers, um, giving morphine injections, and all this sort of these take time. You still have to take the loved one to the doctor visits, and so it just is a huge amount of work. So keep that in mind. This is why end of life doulas can be helpful in this situation, but of course you have to pay for them, whereas hospice is paid for by Medicare. Okay, let me pause. There's lots more I can say about hospice, but let me pause there for questions and comments. And James and Lisa Tobin, this subject matter is of interest now because we have no children, no one to take care of us as we get older or end our lives precision wishes. Yeah. So James and Lisa, um, this is you have no children and no one to take care of you as you get older, and so this is a challenge. James and Lisa, this is a challenge. And I don't know, you have nephews or nieces who could help, or friends. I mean, I mean, you just got to go to the next level up. I mean, if you don't have children, to nephews, nieces, neighbors, you need to think about this and put together a family of sort of a family in quotes of people to help you, and this is a good time for you to think about this and what you're going to do as you get older. Will you go to a CCRC? Will you stay in your home and bring in assisted, round the clock assistance as you get frail, as we all will, as you get frail? Will do you have the resource, the money to bring in assistance, around the clock assistance, if and when you need that? Or will you go to, or do you know of inpatient hospice? I mean, there are, mostly in America, we have hospice at home, not in a like in England. The hospice is mainly in residence, but less so in America. So. Uh, and All right, James and Lisa, feel free to write to me separately about this, and I'll help you offline, because that's a very, it's a very important thing you've raised here. Clara says, can you do hospice in your own home? Yes, Clara, you can. Absolutely. And mostly that's what we do. Hospice is mainly at home. Claudia says, thank you. I have another meeting and have to leave. Claudia, thank you for saying that. I'm looking forward to reading your book. I'm a hospice volunteer and agree that's a wonderful service. Uh, okay. And all right, so well done, everybody. It is 2:39, so we're doing great, and I encourage you to ask more questions. Um, and uh, and then Gary sent me a private note, which I will not read, but Gary, I will read that in 1 second. And thank you for writing. Okay, so I now want to go to the third random topic that I chose, which is green burial. Green burial. This is out of the third bucket, the after death bucket. There's a lot of this in my book. Uh, my wife Gail and I are going to have green burials. We're going to be buried at Reflection Park. That's 40 acres of wild land just outside Silver Spring, about 20 minutes from our house. We've just licensed it. I'm on the board that licenses cemeteries and the Office of Cemetery Oversight, and we've just licensed it. It's coming online in a few months. A green burial is how we used to bury people before the Civil War. Somebody died, they would be laid out in the parlor, washed if they had that luxury, and visitors would come. They'd be put in a biodegradable casket, a wooden casket, taken out and buried. It was all very, very simple, and that's what green burial is. It's a simple. It doesn't involve fancy, heavy caskets with metal handles and fancy woods. It doesn't involve embalmment with dangerous carcinogens. It doesn't involve putting the casket and the body down 6 feet in a heavy concrete vault to stop the lands falling in. And all none of that stuff. And all, by the way, all of that stuff, including embalmment and flame cremation, they're all very polluting and carbon intensive. And if you have any, and if you see yourself as an environmental steward, as somebody who cares about the environment, then this should be very important, because the ways we commonly dispose of bodies, through flame cremation, through embalmment, through conventional burials, are very wasteful. And this is why I want to talk to you about green burial. And I'll tell you about two other methods as well: natural organic reduction, human composting, and water cremation or alkaline hydrolysis. I'll mention this briefly in a moment. But let me start with green burial. So it's basically, your body is decomposed through microbial decomposition, and you're put in a shroud or a biodegradable container. You're buried just down to 3.5 feet, where the microbial activity is most intense. And your body just goes back to its natural constituents. It's very beautiful. It's very economic. It's much less expensive than a conventional burial. Conventional burials in this country cost $12,000 to $14,000. The numbers vary by state, but something in that region. Whereas a green burial can be, $5,000, half the price. So green burial is a wonderful thing, and I encourage you to think about it. In New Jersey, where all of you are, I don't know if you have green burial grounds up there. You can also get a green burial in a conventional cemetery. In more and more cemeteries now, they're called hybrid cemeteries, are now putting aside a portion of their land for green burials. So you can go to a hybrid cemetery and have a green cemetery, even though it's a normal cemetery, but it has a portion of its land devoted to green burials. So that's the thing to look for. But you might in New Jersey, you might have a green burial grounds like Reflection Park here. They tend to green burials tend to lend themselves to more family involvement, more hands-on treatment. That's very nice. One thing I noticed when my parents died and my brothers died, there was hardly any interaction. We didn't carry the bodies. We didn't. It was just awful. There was so little involvement by the survivors, And in a green burial, you can carry the casket. You can, put earth on the casket. You can draw on the casket. You can do lots of things to make it much more closer and much more meaningful. Anyway, so that's green burial. Before I go to NOR or let me look here. Okay, so Sherry says, as far as their life celebrant / funeral, if the Tobins live in New Jersey, they can appoint anyone, family, friend, family member, etc., to carry out their wishes. Yes, quite right, Sherry. Yeah, yes. James and Lisa Tobin, you can reach out to help to lots of different people. And again, if you write to me, I'll help you with that. So Cami, thanks for writing, writes, are there green burial sites in New Jersey? I don't know the answer. Does anyone know the answer? Put your hand up if you know the answer. Are there any green burial sites in New Jersey? Yes, Betsy. Yeah, Betsy. Oh, put your audio on. Yeah. Can you unmute, Betsy? All right.
Here we go.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure that Clara had to do it. And I think I know this from one of your previous workshops here or something I read in depth, that there's maybe 1 to 3 places in New Jersey right now.
Yeah, so
green burials.
Yeah, so
Not a
just,
lot.
no, but the way to find them is just go to Google and Google,
just Google them.
green burials in New Jersey. They'll come right up.
There's a big Catholic cemetery in Ramsey or Mahwah northern New Jersey, and my husband and I visited several years ago, actually, because we heard they had a little area. It's very little.
Is
They
it, did you
do
do a
have
Catholic
it.
ceremony?
Well, we didn't want a Catholic ceremony. We just went there because they had a little green
Oh,
burial.
okay, good for, that's good,
But
good to hear the
there
Catholics
was
doing
a
that.
snafu. There was a catch 22. Oh, but I think we could bypass that. At that point, I still expected us to be cremated, but I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
We're hoping not to do that.
Great. Thank you, Betsy.
You're
And
welcome.
and then Linda says, wanting to backtrack, no problem, to the issue of medical assistance, medical aid in dying, MAID. Um, uh, and yes, absolutely, we can talk. Linda, do you have a question on that? I mean, medical aid in dying, I can't remember. Is it legal in New Jersey? I've forgotten. Yes, it is. Okay, so you're lucky. I live in Maryland and it's not legal here. So medical aid in dying is legal in New Jersey. You're one of the 10 states where it is legal, as in addition to DC. So medical aid in dying is where, for those of you who don't know, is where you ask a doctor to give you a lethal set of drugs, which you then drink, or you put it into a peg feed into your stomach, or you can take it rectally, and it puts you to sleep and then kills you. So this is a way of hastening your death if you are suffering unbearably. Then medical aid in dying can help you. Now, medical aid in dying, you have to be eligible. To be eligible, you have to be within 6 months of dying, like hospice. You have to be over 18. You have to have capacity, mental capacity, which, decision-making capacity, and you have to have the capacity to self-administer the drugs. Somebody can't do it for you, and it can't be done intravenously. It has to be self-administered. So if you suffer from ALS or some neurodegenerative disease, that can be tricky for you, and it gets very tricky with dementia, because with dementia, there's just a small window. Dementia doesn't help. If you have advanced dementia, MAID it doesn't work for you because you have to have mental capacity. But if you do it, but if you take, and you can't, if you have dementia, you can't take advantage of MAID because you're not if you're early on, you're not within 6 months of dying, because dementia, as you all know, horrible disease, can keep you alive for 14 years, 10 to 14 years. So dementia is really a problem, and we are trying to amend the MAID law so that people with dementia can take advantage of it. But that's not going to happen for a long time. So anyway, medical aid in dying, Linda. If you have more questions, I can talk more about that if you want me to. Archie says yes, but it's limited to New Jersey. Yeah, you have to be a resident in New Jersey. There are only 2 states where you don't have to be a resident for medical aid in dying, and that is Vermont and Oregon. Those have dropped their residency requirements. James and Linda again asked to be clear, a green burial does not involve cremation. Absolutely does not. It very much does not. So thank you, James and Linda, for asking that. Yes, a green burial, you take the body, you might wash it, or but you don't have to do that. But it does no. Green cremation is the opposite of flame cremation, with a fire cremation, where the body is incinerated at 1600 degrees Fahrenheit. Sherry says in New Jersey, Steel Man Town Cemetery in South Jersey is a green cemetery. Wonderful. Hybrids are Rosemont and Parsippany Presbyterian and Mary Rest. Thank you, Sherry. Wonderful. Thanks for finding that out. And Betsy says, as far as I know, there are 1 to 3 cemeteries in New Jersey that provide green cemeteries. Perhaps your organization can consider doing a workshop talk on the issue of end-of-life care that James and Lisa brought up. Yeah, that's a good idea. Although I and my husband have children, grandchildren, nieces, etc., we do not expect or want any of them to be responsible for intensive end-of-life care. These are all very good questions and comments. But can I just say thank you to all of you for getting involved in this, participating in the debate, asking questions. This is wonderful. So keep them coming. It's 2:49. We've got about 20 minutes left. So keep asking questions, and you can ask me questions on anything, any topic in the aging, dying, death arena. Okay, so we've talked about hospice. Anybody else have a particular question on hospice? I don't think I see Annie. Let me just check back on the questions here for a second. Okay. Yes. Um, yes. Very, very good. This has been great. This has been great. Okay. Cami says, what is terramation. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that term, terramation, from the Latin. It sounds like to burial in the ground. Terra is ground, earth. Mation is, terramation. Can someone look that up? Clara, would you mind Googling terramation to see what that means? Resummation is another word for um, for uh, alkaline hydrolysis, but terramation may be another name for me. Okay, so we'll come back to that in a second, and then here we go. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, thank you, Sherry. Thank you. Yeah, terramation, natural organic reduction. I'll talk about that in a minute. Human composting. Okay, very good. So Cami, I'll talk about terramation or natural organic reduction, NOR, and I'll just do in 1 second. James and Lisa, was a green burial available in New Jersey about 12? Was a green burial available in New Jersey about 12 years? You don't know the answer to. Does anyone know the answer to James and Lisa Tobin's question? Was a green burial ground available in New Jersey about 12 years ago? I don't know the answer, but someone else may. So if you know the answer, please respond in the chat. Okay, so we've talked about. So any questions on green? Any more questions on before I go to NOR and alkaline hydrolysis? Anybody have a question about green burial? Gary Gary says, I'm not sure if I meant to read that out loud or not, but let me read it out loud. I also think you need a good relationship with your doctor, and that you, not the doctor, are the major input person as you are living with the dying person. Yeah, excellent, Gary. Thanks so much. Yeah, having a good doctor, a sympathetic, empathetic doctor is very important, but a doctor who is driven by patient directive care. In other words, the patient is directing the care, not the doctor. And that's the point that Gary's making. The major input should come from the healthcare agent looking after the dying person, or the dying person themselves, if they're able to talk. Thank you, Gary. Okay, so any more questions on green before I move on? Green burial. Let's see. I hope I talked enough about green burial. Let's see. I hope I covered all the main points. I think I did. It's a lovely thing to do, and look at what I wrote. I'll send you a handout and look what I wrote about it. Oh yes, Archie responds to that question from James and Lisa. Archie says, yes, Bob Prout has offered that option for 12 years. Oh, Clara has a hand up. Yes, Clara. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. It's just rather more complicated, so I didn't want to type it out. So my parents are 83. They live at home. My father is bedridden. He had a stroke 5 years ago, and he's mentally sharp, but he's paralyzed on his left side. He has COPD, he has congestive heart failure, a host of medical issues that sort of came out of the stroke. My mother, who is also 83, has diabetes, COPD, congestive heart failure, and is almost blind. They refuse to have hospice care. And not only do they refuse it, the doctors say they're not eligible because they can't say that they will pass within the next 6 months.
Gotcha.
So they have aides that come in and take care of them.
Yeah, good.
But there have been 2 times where there has been a medical crisis, and my parents have said, no, we're not going to the hospital. The aides have called up the children, us. We have, from a distance, because they're far away from us, insisted that they go to the hospital. The last time this happened, they said, no more. We do not want any medical intervention. And they want to make something legally binding so that nobody in that house can be accused of neglect or anything. Is there something that's not hospice, but allows them to do what they want to do, which is to die in their home, but would absolve anyone from any type of
Okay, so Clara, that's such a good question, and I'm very and so let me quickly answer the question. What have they done an advance directive?
So they have a medical advance directive,
So
which,
they have a post or a most?
yes,
Good. And signed by the doctor?
by the doctor.
And this post or most says that they do not want to have CPR, for example.
Well, no, it says that theirs is a little bit more specific. I think my father's biggest fear, he was a college professor, he was a military officer. His biggest fear is losing his ability to make decisions.
Yeah.
And so his is very clear that if he is declared brain dead, there should be no intubating,
Yeah.
no trying to save his
Yeah.
life. But if it's a heart attack and they think that it's, they should take whatever, procedures to do to save his life.
Okay, so all this needs to be written down in an advance directive, and then the doctor who signed the post and most this needs to be in there as well. Is that point about the about if he has a heart attack and they think he can be saved, he wants to be saved? Is that in there as well?
It is.
Okay, good, good, good.
Any life-saving measure should be taken unless
Okay. And
there's no brain activity.
this advanced directive and post or most is on the fridge so that
It's on
emergency
the
people can,
fridge.
yeah, good. Okay, so I think that's doing well. And so I think the key for your dad and your mom is for them to make clear to you and your siblings and to any and the people who come in who are looking the round the people who come and look after them what they want so that people can implement them and your dad and mom need to tell people, look, what we want is written out and in our advanced directives and in the post and most and they should talk about it with their with people that around them so that
Right. So that's my question. That's the problem. They say that they want medical intervention if they think that their life can be saved. But then when they have a medical emergency, they're saying they no longer want to go to the hospital.
yeah,
Okay.
that's a problem. I'm surprised about they're not. I'm surprised that their doctor doesn't think they're eligible for a hospice. And you might want to talk to the doctor about that. Ask them to reconsider, their eligibility. Because it would be good for them to be in hospice. I mean, they may not die for a year or 18 months. Don't forget, Jimmy Carter lived for 200 days in hospice. And so after 6 months, you just get reauthorization. So I would encourage, because it sounds like they're ready for hospice, that because in hospice, you can, people often don't know this, but in hospice, you can get treated for the disease that's not killing you. In other words, you stop curative measures for if you're dying of breast cancer, But if while you're dying of breast cancer in hospice, you have an ingrown toenail or a blockage in your colon, you can get that seen to. So it's not that you're giving up all care, you're just giving up curative care for the disease that's killing you. So
Okay.
so he can get still treated. But it does sound like to me like I'm not a doctor, but it sounds to me like he's ready for hospice. He's done his AD, he's let people know what he wants. I think they're doing everything right. So Clara,
Yeah,
again, write to me off the record, write to me privately, write to me separately, and I'll help you more with that.
yeah. Hey,
Yes, Gary.
Chris, can
Quick,
I
quick.
share?
Gary,
Can I share something?
Gary, keep your comments pithy though, because we're running out of time.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick, Clara, my wife died at home, but we used, and I'm in Ohio, but I'm on Medicare and Blue Cross, but we used a navigator program, which was palliative care. And that way we had a nurse practitioner come till we went on hospice. It didn't work out. We went back to palliative care, and then Lee passed away. So as I said earlier, you need that relationship with a doctor, which we had. And then Blue Cross paid for the palliative care nurse, but I was involved. And there's no way that you're not going to be involved with your parents. It's not going to work out. And with James and Lisa, they have to find somebody also that cares about them. I mean, you need, Chris, you know that, you need an individual, but I will look into somehow to have that type of care. Okay,
Very good. Very
thanks,
good.
Chris.
Yeah, no, thank you, Gary. That is great. So Clara, good luck. And Clara, you got my email. Write to me, and I'll help you with that offline. Um, Marilyn Trank says, are you a proponent of 5 wishes? I am not. I'm opposed to 5 wishes. It comes out of a religious organization who is currently fighting and opposed to things like medical aid in dying. Jim Towie, I do not approve of them. The 5 wishes is it has a lot of good things in it, but the best advance directive to use is the one from your attorney general in the state, New Jersey state attorney general. 5 wishes has an internal contradiction. It says that that you can say you want to die if you want to die, but then takes that away in another part. So I don't like 5 wishes, and compassionate choices is opposed to it as well. Okay, and then James and Lisa, where do you keep your advance directive? You keep it where people can find it, James and Lisa. Keep it where people can find it, so on the fridge, and you need a hard copy. Give a hard copy of advance directive to your doctors, all your doctors. And so they have it in your medical records. Have it in give a copy to each of your to you don't have children, but give it to people and neighbors, anybody who might find it helpful, and have it available out for your people who assist you. Previously printed and signed docs. How and where do these directives, death docs reside? They seems they must be immediately available to show. Yeah, so keep it immediately available. Yeah, very good. Okay, so we're running low on time. It is 3:02, and I'm going to finish at 3:10. We've talked about hospice and green borough. Oh gosh, I didn't talk about very quickly, natural organic reduction. And so natural organic reduction, also called human composting. You put the body, I'm going to talk fast, so listen carefully. You put the body in a steel capsule. In human composting, also called natural organic reduction, NOR, you then surround it with alfalfa, wood chips, and straw. Slowly revolve it. Over 4 to 6 weeks, it decomposes through microbial decomposition, and you're left with about a cubic yard, 600 pounds of very nutritious, fertile soil. So you convert the body into rich soil, and you can use that soil. You can put it in a cemetery, or you can use it for a conservation project, or you put it under a tree. You can use it as new nutritious soil. And so there's much more to it, but it cost about $7,000. I don't know if it's legal in New Jersey. It's just become legal where I live in Maryland. And it's a very, very good thing. It's competitive and economically competitive with conventional beer. And then the other one, that's NOR. Then the other one is alkaline hydrolysis, how Desmond Tutu disposed of his body, alkaline hydrolysis, also called water cremation or resummation. And this is where you put the body in a steel capsule. You surround it by 95% water, by liquid, 90% water, 5% lye. There are 2 different types, with pressure, without pressure, and with high temperature, without. The details don't matter. But over a period of hours, 10 to 14 hours, the body decomposes. You use a cremulator like you do with fire cremation to crush the bones. Like you didn't, I don't maybe some people don't even know that, but in fire cremation, you use a cremulator to crush the bones. You do the same thing with water cremation, and then you have ashes like you do with fire cremation. But it's a much more greener, less polluting, less carbon intensive way of body disposition. So those 2 things, water cremation, and you find much more about them in my book, water cremation or alkaline hydrolysis, and then NOR, or human composting. Very, very important things to know about, and for ways of disposing of your body. Okay, so I want to so let's have a quick look at the questions. Bob Rinklin says, what about talking briefly about the importance of people decluttering your home and life to lessen the burden? Okay, so I have a whole chapter in my book on death cleaning and decluttering. Incredibly important. If you don't know what death cleaning is, it simply is dealing with emptying your house out so your survivors don't have the burden of spending 3 months clearing out your house. So it's decluttering your house. Decluttering and death cleaning mean the same thing, basically. But death cleaning is really preparing you for your death so that when you die, your house is organized, it's not cluttered with things. So this is incredibly important. This is part of preparing for a good death, because on your deathbed, you don't want to lie there thinking, oh my God, I've left my kids sort of 4 months of work of cleaning out the house and they don't have time. They're busy. They've got jobs. They've got families. And I've now burdened them with this humongous job. You don't want that. You don't want that guilt. You want to be able to say the reverse. I left the house in good order and so on. Okay, so that is a very brief thing, but I'll send you a handout. By the way, go to my website, which is chrispalmeronline.com. Clara, would you put that in the website, if you maybe already did so, but if you put that in the chat, please, chrispalmeronline.com. There are lots of free handouts there, 25 of them on death and dying, funeral planning, green burial, advanced directives, all sorts of free handouts. So help yourself. They're free and they're designed to just help people in any way. Okay. So let's see. So Bob, I hope that was okay on decluttering and death cleaning. Uh, Archie Palmer says, warning, in New Jersey, paramedics often ignore the green post and subject the dying to agonizing unrest. Yes, Archie, thanks for saying that. Yeah, you have to be so careful and so assertive. That's why you want to make sure your green post has it says clearly in it that you do not want to have CPR. You do not want to be intubated or whatever. Also, alkaline hydrolysis is not available in New Jersey. Interesting. Okay, so hopefully it will become legal there. I'm sure it will become legal there in the future. Okay, and Betty, do you have any concerns about for-profit versus not-for-profit hospice care? Yes, very much, Betty. You want to go to a non-profit hospice if you can. Now, of course, there are non-profit hospices that sometimes don't level up, and there are for-profit hospices that sometimes do a good job. But for most of if you find a whole chapter on this in my book, you find for most of it's almost, you can say fairly clearly that it's very much more likely you'll have a good experience at a non-profit hospice. And the hospice I work for is non-profit. So yeah, use non-profit hospices if you possibly can. Okay, so it's 3:07. So I want to finish by reading a letter from my book. You find this in the appendix. I believe that people at the end of their lives should have choice in dying, including the choice of a chosen death. And I think if people are suffering, facing unbearable suffering and an unacceptable degradation in the quality of their life, then I believe they should have the right, if they want it, to hasten their death. Now, some of you may not agree with this, which is fine. So, but that's my position. And a chosen death can be humane, gentle, and wise. And I think we should all have the right to finish our lives on our own terms. So on page 227 of this book, you'll find a draft letter that I wrote. And the reason I'm pointing it out to you, and I'm going to read it to you, is because you may want to do something similar. Some of you may want to do something similar. So this is a letter I wrote to my family about 3 years ago. By the way, as background, you should know that I have serious heart disease, and I've had open heart surgery, and it will most likely die. My doctors tell me will most likely die a painful death, very painful death with breathlessness and other awful symptoms. So I drafted this letter 3 years ago, and I'm going to, and it's a draft. I mean, so if I ever use it, it'll have a future date on it. So this is how it reads: to my precious family and friends, I've decided to end my life because of the continued pain and unbearable suffering from heart disease. I have lived a full, complete, meaningful, and useful life, but I have had enough and no longer wish to continue. I am a wreck and only a relic of the energetic, productive, and creative person I used to be. I've taken advantage of all the available medical care interventions. I've decided that further medical treatments are useless and will only hurt me and worsen my life. This decision is mine alone. I'm in a rational and calm state of mind and feel completely at ease with this decision. I'm not depressed or mentally unstable. No one has helped me with this decision to end my life. And no one, including the beneficiaries of my estate, has put pressure on me to do so. I support the Final Exit Network and believe in its mission. I have chosen to die now. If I'm discovered before I stop breathing, I forbid anyone, including doctors and paramedics, to attempt to resuscitate me. If I'm revived against my wishes, I shall take legal action against anyone who's helped in that action. Please add the following language to my obituary. Quote, Chris took his own life in irrational self-deliverance toward the end of a terminal disease relating to his heart. He did this not out of cowardice or escapism, but because it made no sense to continue living with an unacceptable quality of life when nothing good or loving or kind could be accomplished. He died with a heart full of love, gratitude, and appreciation for all those he loved and who had supported him in his life. End quote. That goes in with the obituary. And then the letter ends. Thank you for your understanding. Love, Chris /dad/grandpa. So I wanted to share that with you. Let me see as we come to an end here. It's 3:11. Let me quickly look here. Okay. Okay, very good. Okay, so Archie, thank you for your comments about Phil Murphy. That's great. And Clara, thank you for that. James and Lisa, can we print this Zoom Q&A that we discuss? Yes, of course. Clara will tell you how to do that, how to print the Q&A. Will you do that, Clara? Tell James and Lisa how to print the Zoom Q&A. Clara says, yes, go to the top of the chat and see the 3 dots, select Save Chat. It will be saved to your desktop. Clara, thank you so much, Clara. Good. Yes, okay. A record of the meeting will also be on the website by Friday. Thank you, Clara. And Kerry, thank you, Chris Palmer, for today's presentation and the free handouts. I come from your website. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks for that nice note. Betty, thank you so much, and may you continue to live a good life until the very end. This information is very valuable and comforting as we all get older and approach the end. So I want to say thank you for those lovely comments, everybody. Thank you for participating so actively. It's been a joy to be with you all. I want to finish reading from page 212 from my book. I wrote this: death is a transformative teacher, but few want to become willing students. I hope this book encourages you to become a student of your own end of life and to determine what you can do to achieve a good death. I hope you have a spirited and robust old age, live as long as possible, agree only to treatments that align with your goals, and have total patient agency. When the time comes, I hope you have a rapid and brief deterioration and a painless death at home, surrounded by your loved ones. I hope you will be serene at the moment of your death and have no fear or anxiety. And I want to finish with one more thing, but let me just quickly look in the chat room. And Betty says, thank you so much. Oh, yes, I read that already. Yes, I appreciate all the thank yous. That's lovely. Okay, so I'm going to finish. I want to finish by reading something you can find in my book on page 262. I was a wildlife filmmaker for 30 years and traveled over the world. I made several films about wolves. And so I want to read you The Wolf Credo by Del Gertz. It goes this way: respect the elders. Teach the young. Cooperate with the pack. Play when you can. Hunt when you must. Rest in between. Share your affections. Voice your feelings. Leave your mark. Thank you all so much for having me today. It's been a joy to be with you. I'll hand the microphone back to Bob Rinklin. Thank you, Bob.
Archie, Archie Palmer, Chris Palmer. Thank you so much for a beautiful presentation. The FCANNJ does have copies of Chris's book. We're willing to sell it to anyone on the call today for a reduced price of $15. If you send us an email at FCANNJ at gmail.com, we'll tell you how to get a reduced price book and we'll mail it to you. Chris, thank you very much. It is an excellent book. This is the copy that I bought from Amazon. And thank you again, and I appreciate everyone being here, and I appreciate this was an excellent annual meeting and an excellent presentation. Thank you again. Clara, you can sign us all off.
No, not
Thanks,
yet.
everybody.
Not yet? Okay, Archie.
Archie's going to counteract Bob. I think everyone on this meeting deserves a copy. If you already have one, please don't be piggy and get a second one. Just let me know. That's contact 973-986-2627. That's my personal mobile. Email me, text me, and I will assist your getting it for free because you deserve it. And Chris did the most spirited and most informative program that I have heard. And there've been some really good ones on this particular FCA connection. But Chris, thank you muchly. And please let me know if you want a copy. If you don't, we're going to give them to other people in future operations. But if we burn up the 20 that we've got, so what? You deserve them.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, okay, Archie, you win. The problem is I have to mail them out, but anyway, so be it.
I'll help you mail them. I'll do the dirty work.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. So much fun to spend time with you. Great questions. Lovely to spend time with you.
Thank you.
Not
so
at all. My
much.
pleasure. Pleasure to be with you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. Archie, it was great. Thanks for having me. I didn't mean to do too much.
You did. Your questions were spot on.
Well,
and your observations are fine. I'm glad you came. Thank you.
Well,
Gary.
thank you. And really, James and Lisa, I mean, as I said, I even wanted to move Archie. I'll be 88, so, and my wife passed away, so I'm more aware of the end of the line too. But I think we just do what we can and look for the people that we know that'll take care of us.
Yep. And not burden them at the same time. You do know I broke my hip.
I didn't know that. That's why I haven't seen you for a while, and then I've been really wondering what's happened with you. Yeah,
Good Friday morning, I got up, I was turning off the noisemaker, the white noisemaker on Lynn's side of the bed, stood up and just didn't stop and just kept going over and went whoomp on the floor, broke my right hip. That was Easter morning. Later that day, I was scheduled to give my 753rd platelet donation. I had to cancel, but I'm looking.
What kind of donation? What kind of donation?
Platelet. It's for the clotting part of your blood.
Yeah. Platelets.
I've done that 752 times. I was looking forward to number 753. I'm still looking forward to it.
Yeah, you'll be able to.
I'm screw loose, but now I've got 3 screws holding my right hip together. I am exercising. I'm working hard. I got ache, but I don't have pain, and I'm not feeling pitiful. I am annoyed with myself for being careless. But
no. You know what I think, Chris? I don't know, maybe James might chime in on this. I think as hard as we try to walk, that hip may just give out.
Yeah.
Because of our age and the wearing out. It's like a branch breaks off the tree.
Yeah, when the wind blows hard.
Even though you're very careful, I'm concerned now about a little bit about my right hip with some kind of groin pain, but I'm going to my doctor tomorrow
Good.
and have him, he'll run some kind of test. But as I said earlier to Joy, I don't know you, but I know Chris. I mean, I know Chris too. I know I've heard Chris a few times. But the point is to find a doctor where you can have at least half say. And if you find the right one, he wants you to tell him what's wrong with you so he can help you live at the level that you want to live right now. No,
Absolutely.
not, you're not going to get any younger and you don't want to
Nope.
get any older. But,
Don't want to get more decrepit. We're going to get older, God willing.
Wow, I've
Not be
been really,
decrepit.
down it anyway. I was wondering about on Easter.
Yeah. Easter night, I got screwed back together. But to
I
be
mean-
honest, I'm trying to think back what's going on, and part of it may be vertigo, some dizziness, times of feeling sort of it's woozy, and then I'm aware that post cataract surgery, a number of years ago, my eyes are not always coordinating, and I'm wondering if that and maybe some vestibular issues in my ears could be the cause. But the eye vision is what I'm aware of. That's why I feel as I'm looking in two places at once and stop it.
But would the hip though go because of that, or would the hip just go because of the hip?
It got banged. It got banged hard, and I said, "Did it break and then I fall?" No, they said, "No, you hit and broke." And so I've often thought that people would have like a mini stroke and then fall and whoop, there goes the hip. But in my case, that's not what happened. And but what is it? And part of it is impetuosity and not taking time. I now know as the therapist told me when I got back here to Cranes Mill, I demanded therapy immediately that afternoon on Wednesday. And she said, when you stand up, take 3 good breaths. I now stand up and take 3 good breaths. That gets my head functioning. I'm not lightheaded. And so I'm passing that along because I learned it for me the hard way. I hope you can take advantage
because
of that.
when I get out of bed in the morning, I use this thing in the bed to pull myself up.
Okay, that's
and
good.
then maybe to sit there for a minute. And now what you're saying is take 3 good breaths.
Right, because the breathing helps to get the oxygen into your brain. It gets your blood flowing, and it also makes us focus on what we're doing. Then get up slowly. It's amazing. I mean, first you're doing the right thing. You're sitting up, sitting a moment, and then you stand. So
I'll be dizzy. Yeah, if I stand up too quick, I know I'm not sure I would not fall over.
I thoroughly can. I'm right there with you, Gary.
Yeah,
absolutely. So the thing is, once standing, take 3 good intentional breaths. Yeah. And that helps to oxygenate your body so that you're more capable.
Archie,
I mean, you're learning from a young guy who failed the first test, but he's learned it pretty well now.
James, how old are you? How old are you guys?
I'm 85. I'm 80.
No,
I'm
yeah,
85.
I know. James, how old are you guys?
hi, Gary. This is James. I'm 76. My wife Lisa's 9 years younger, and you are.
Oh, that's okay.
Archie, I would like to add something if it may help at all.
Sure.
With regard to standing up and getting erect and taking those 3 deep breaths, what I also find very useful is to orient myself that I am standing perpendicular. I use my elbow and I make contact intentionally. I make contact and put light pressure on my elbow against a wall or wherever I am. So
I can't do that from the way our bed is configured, and it's a great bed. I can't lean on the wall. There's nothing to lean on.
let me ask you another question, if I may.
Sure.
The current state of affairs in your hip, are
Yeah.
you a candidate for a hip replacement?
No, I was told they couldn't tell until they got in. They found that it was a break, and that they could screw it together with 3 titanium screws. If it wasn't tidy, then they would put a half replacement in the shank, but they didn't have to. The bones were okay. It's ironic. Both my father, mother, and aunt, and uncle all fell and broke their hips. So
Oh.
it's got to be partly genetic.
So the 3 screws will work just like a hip replacement then?
Well,
From
they're putting back. They're holding together what is essentially good bone structure, I hope.
Oh, uh-huh.
And we've walked. The 57 years of our marriage, Lynn and I have walked and walked. The retirement community we live in we do a 1 mile walk around in the morning, usually in the evening, and then a lot of walking additionally. So if anyone was in reasonably decent walking condition, I was.
Yeah.
I'm in a wheelchair right now, just rolling back and forth, but I will get up and walk with the walker.
Yeah.
And I've got great therapy here. I'm really very pleased because parts of being at Cranes Mill have been an absolute terror for 10 years. But we live in the best house on campus. There are only 4 of them, 4 standalone. And we are blessed with the best of the 4. And I can see it from the window over here. But it's hard to see because the leaves are filling in. But the therapy here is superb.
Wonderful.
They brought me back in wonderful ways. Is it James or Jim?
It doesn't matter either way, because
Okay.
Archie, I could share with you experience we've had in this household. I'm 76, but I have all my joints. My wife, being 9 years, a little younger, she's had so far 2 joints replaced. 2 years ago, she had a TKR, a total knee replacement. For the most part, even 2 years ago, that procedure in Morristown Hospital was more or less a day operation. It was outpatient. And just 1 year ago, Archie, I think as a result of the bad knee, she had favored the other leg a lot.
Yeah.
And she wore out her knee. And she had wore out her hip. And she experienced a lot. I beg your pardon. She experienced a lot of pain in walking.
Also arthritis.
So to make a long
Arthur
story
likes
short,
to move into our bodies, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she met a very wonderful doctor that did her knee from Tri-County Orthopedics, Dr. Dundon, and he's a very good reputation. We found out all the nurses in Morristown Hospital that were taking care of Lisa, when they had their prosthetic or they had to have knees or hips replaced, we found out the nurses themselves, the registered nurses down in the hospital, they used Dr. Dundon. And Dr. Dundon did a total hip, but what they did is a new procedure, Archie, from the front. It's called posterior hip replacement. She was in the hospital in the morning and she was released in the afternoon. And the physical therapist was here in our house. And immediately, I think it was maybe 2 days later, the physical therapist showed up at our house and she said, "That's it. Let's get up, put your sneakers on. We're going to go out and start doing loops around the driveway." She was working when I drove her home from the total hip replacement. I pulled into the driveway. I opened up the car door, the passenger door. Without any invitation or help, she got out of the car. She walked up 3 steps, walked into the house.
Lisa, how was the pain? How was the discomfort when you did that?
None.
I didn't have any.
Any at all.
Wow, you had super care.
I didn't take any, they gave you that and, all sorts of drugs.
In case you had extreme pain, they gave
I took Tylenol, that's it.
Yeah, they gave Percocet, which is
I won't take that. I did that and hit the floor.
Oh, that's what's that product that's very addictive?
It's a narcotic.
OxyContin. They had me on. They had that prescribed for me. I said, "Don't put it near me. I won't take it."
Yeah.
But I'm not being a doctor. I was just wondering. I know that you've had some fractures in the hip and it's been broken, but I was just wondering because from a quick synopsis of the operation, looking at the CT scans and stuff, what they did, and she felt absolutely nothing during the procedure and absolutely no discomfort after.
Wow.
Is
Wow.
Dr. Dunnan goes in there, and whatever the bone is called, that is your leg, your upper leg that goes into the socket of
Yeah.
your hip.
Right.
He replaced both the socket and the ball of the hip. So he cut off part of her leg bone. And I noticed on the x-ray, I could see the difference in the color.
Uh-huh.
I could see the ball that was on the top of her leg bone now. And I could see this new fresh socket that was part of her pelvis. And
Well fitting, working well
right.
together.
And I was doing a follow-up. I went into the exam room with Lisa and Dr. Dundon because I had a follow-up appointment with Dr. Dundon about my back. I have scoliosis, and he was going to look at my back. And
Ouch. Ouch.
cut the story short. When Dundon got done looking at her hip, he took pictures that day. He went out. My wife went out. I was waiting in the exam room. The three of them came back in. Dr. Dundon went through his business of the CT scans of the hip and everything. And when it was all done, I'm a really detailed guy. I was very inquisitive. I asked Dr. Dundon, I said, what is holding and securing that ball that I think is a piece of titanium in the top of her bone? He simply looked at me and he put his hand up as if he had a glass of water. And with his other hand, he said, I took a hammer and I went boom, boom, boom. It's not fastened, it's not screwed, it's just it's put in there.
It's
What's
there
good-
and doesn't have any kinks. That's good.
And Arnie, what's good about it is a few years ago, a surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon came up with posterior procedure. That's done from the front. And what it is if you didn't have a posterior, you were done from the back. That's where they had to cut the tendons and your muscles, and it took a lot of recovery and a lot of therapy. What Dundon told me is with the posterior, he says, well, to get it simple, I go in there and I move those things out of the way. I hold them, my team moves them out of the way and they hold them out of the way while I go in and do my thing. He saws off the top of your leg bone. He pops in a new ball. He takes believe it or not, he takes the ball, the socket right out of your pelvis, and he puts a titanium gizmo in there. All of this stuff is just put in there. And what keeps it all together are your tendons, if you will, the elastic bands.
Right. The rubber bands that hold us together. Yeah.
And I'm telling you, she got home. She was home 2 days. And again, the delivery is the killer. It takes 30 minutes to drive from Morristown to Little Falls, New Jersey.
Okay.
In the driveway, my anticipation was to get out and help my wife get up out of the car. She gets up out of the car as if she just went for a milk. She gets out of the car and she walks up with a normal gait to the front steps. The sidewalk's about 10, 15 feet. She walks up three steps to the front of the house, walks into the living room and sits down. Now, she was home for 2 days when Aetna sent over the physical therapist for the house. And he says, no, put your sneakers on, we're going outside. It was right off the top of the bat. She was in pretty aggressive physical therapy probably 2 days later, and it's been downhill ever since.
That's not sounding good.
No, I said that incorrectly.
It's been good ever since.
It's been good ever since.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going downhill.
She has no more limp. She goes up the stairs, foot over foot. She no longer goes 1 foot at a time.
Wow.
All I'm saying is whatever technical problems you have in your broken or fractured bones, if they've ruled out a posterior hip replacement, you might want to get a second opinion to find out some of the new procedures.
It might be worth, I hear you. But I'm going to
I don't know how to explain it. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking like this thing's going to be as good or better than what she normally had. Now, she had bad arthritis in her hip, and I remember maybe 20 years ago, our orthopedic doctor at the time said, you're a candidate for a hip replacement. they did not have posterior procedures back then.
Hmm.
That would have been a much more a much
Painful, yeah,
recovery.
more complicated. Yeah.
The biggest killer was the doctor 20 years ago said, I don't want to do your hip now because I put the hip in 20 years and 20 years it's going to wear out. You're going to have another one. The life of the hips were not the way they are now. They put technology inside your body that's going to out. You know, it's funny you talk about a green burial. There's a good point. I don't see how titanium is going to be broken down chemically.
It isn't. You need to remove it, just like a pacemaker. Cut it out because it's worth
Why wouldn't you
money.
just leave it in the ground?
I don't know. It's funny.
It's worth money. You can sell it for crying. I hear people make sure they collect the titanium and the gold from your teeth, and then you're worth more dead after you're. than you were.
That guy in New Jersey, that guy in Pennsylvania, that Quaker, he'll wrap you in a shroud, and
Yeah.
whatever you have
it
on.
can stay. It'll stay, but there's no need to waste it. Make it available to someone else to use.
Yeah.
I don't like taking it out, Archie. I don't like touching the body after a person dies. That's what bothers me about flame cremation, and what bothers me about normal death is embalming, where
That's an abomination.
So I was fortunate with my wife that she died on a Thursday and the funeral director buried her on a Monday in a cardboard box, but we had cemetery lots, so we ended up, a normal burial. But that was Archie. That was before I joined the Roman Catholic Church, though. But I don't know whether that wouldn't have happened now if you died at home, because I'm in a relatively what I'll call progressive church, because I brought me to this church. Anyway,
you're a good guy, Gary. You're smart. You're doing what you need to do. And Jim, you're doing what you need to. And Lisa, God bless you.
Oh,
you guys got time, Jim,
Archie
you and Lisa.
Gary, before we leave, let me just tell you quickly how we got here. I've been trying desperately to join the organization, but I've
dropped the ball, and I apologize.
No. I didn't know the organization. So, that's a good point, Archie. Let me tell you how we got here.
Yeah, how did you?
For the last 2.5 years, Lisa has been taking care of her father.
Jim,
Her father lives about a half hour from here. He lives in Dover, New Jersey. He's 101 years of age.
He's amazing. Yeah.
He is going to be 102 in, I think.
No, he's going to be 101 in.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. He's 100 years old. He's going to be 101. About 12, 14 years ago, my wife lost her mother. And her mother, Betty Kearns, was a believer of this.
It was Memorial Society.
Yeah.
Right. It was back then it was called the Memorial.
Yeah.
Right.
I would have to think that, not knowing the inception of when Betty Kearns joined it, but Betty Kearns joined your group many years ago.
Yeah.
Which of course brought on James Joseph Kearns, which is the husband. I guess he was raised Catholic, but once he was an adult, he didn't bother following the church. So if anything, he was agnostic.
Okay.
Now that said, so Betty joined your organization, and she wanted the green burial.
Yep.
When she passed, she was cremated. I don't know why, and maybe that wasn't available for green, but she's cremated. But she went the path of your organization. That said, James Kearns, who is surviving now, he's 100 years old. My wife rotates overnight stays in Dover with her father.
Lovely.
Between my wife, a brother, and two brothers, if you will.
Good show.
So my wife, Lisa, stays with her father for 2 nights and returns back to my house. So we've been doing this for 2.5 years. Now, the reason we're doing this is 2.5 years ago, Lisa also had a sister, Diane. She passed 2.5 years ago, but she lived in Dover with her father. So her name is Diane. Diane was the caretaker for James Kearns.
Oh, yeah.
Get it.
And 2.5 years ago, we all got together as a family, And we figured a 100-year-old, or at the time, a 98 or 99-year-old individual should not
Yeah.
be alone in a house by himself. So
But he's a determined old cuss, and he's decided to stay there, right?
Right.
right.
Well, if you
look,
take him out
Arnie-
of there, it'll
Arnie,
have a
unfortunately,
detrimental effect.
yeah, unfortunately, he's a tough old dog and he wants everything. He wants to live in the big house. He
Yeah.
wants to have everything, and he'd like to have, he wants to have his life
The way it was.
he wants
Yeah.
to- he is going to be processed by your organization. When I lose my father-in-law, he is going to be handled and processed by the FCC, your group. Now, I got involved because my wife and I, in the last 2.5 years, started thinking about what are we going to be doing. So
Right.
we've jumped on the bandwagon. And all I've tried to do is using the email contact and lately the phone. I've called with voicemail and an email to try to figure out, before I send a blind donation, we want to join the group, and we didn't
Yeah.
know how.
Mm.
Now, Arnie, I think about 5 months ago, you had a Zoom meeting, correct?
Correct.
Now you published, and I got it from Lisa's father, you published a Zoom meeting that had a meeting ID and a passcode.
Uh-huh.
I tried a few months, I tried to sneak into that Zoom meeting, but for whatever reason, your website had an invalid passcode. It just didn't work.
Yes, it was. I'm sorry. They announced the wrong one. The date, if you look at it, it's 25. This is 2025, 04 April 27. They used the one for last year's annual meeting, which was ending 28. So you couldn't get in. And I'm just appalled that we didn't catch that. So a bunch of people were left out and never got in. And we screwed up. We didn't record. So when Clara and I were talking before this one, I said, remember to record. And she started it at 1:01.
Mm.
So it's recorded this time. I'm
Yeah.
glad.
Hey, back,
Great.
Yeah.
James, I want to get back to your father-in-law now. He must be in pretty good mental and physical shape. And what's he think about
Yes, he
his
is.
death? Does
Gary, he's sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
Sharp as a tack. I'll tell you, an observation I had for Easter. We had some family come over. We had Easter supper. We had Easter Sunday dinner at her father's. And a lot of people traveled to come up there. Now, there were some younger women in the kitchen hanging around a little bit, some nieces and nephews. And I caught off the corner of my eye, my 100-year-old father-in-law was all of a sudden like a young little guy. He was on
Yeah.
the corner. He was chatty, and everybody, all the people that are commingling, they're not picking up on that. But me being a guy, I'm over in the corner going, looking, I'm thinking like, I got to keep an eye on my father-in-law. And I think he doesn't know what's going on. Look at him. He's right over there with the Danes. And I said, there's nothing
Yeah.
with this guy. But that's the thing. We want to get into that. So that's how I got onto this. And
I'm glad you made it.
just an oversight,
Yeah.
Archie, but I did try before I jumped into the Zoom meeting uninvited, if you will.
You're
only
welcome.
because-
You're welcome to be on board. We're happy.
Well, because I got my father-in-law's meeting ID and passcode. So Lisa and I want to become active members. We want to get involved with the donations and stuff. So you want to consider us new members as of today, I guess, and we'll figure out.
Yeah.
Let me know what we have to do to come on board. But we're-
Okay.
Right. We just go to the website.
yeah, there's so much
And
information on
join.
your website, and I'll go to the library to see if I can get the book that.
No, you can borrow the book, but you can
Archie,
have
that's
a copy. I
nice.
bought one.
Very nice of you put his book out. I have one of those old Before I Go.
You
Archie,
should know.
that
Yeah,
I could mail it.
No, that's okay. I'll email
Okay,
Jim and
good.
Lisa.
No,
I'll
but
email
I
you
could
that.
mail it to Jim and Lisa too. I could mail a
this was a
copy.
great day then. You know what? We've accomplished, at least myself, I've accomplished a lot. We not only were able to absorb a terrific presentation,
Mhm.
we were able to talk to some people actually live that are members and officers of
Yeah.
the organization. and we've been able to introduce ourselves to come on board. So this has been a win-win situation. I want to thank
Yeah,
you guys very much for the time and trouble taken for this, but
yeah.
um,
You know, I
Happy to
think,
have you
Archie,
on
the
board.
best way to do this for meetings is maybe quarterly to have like a coordinator and you got people in your group who could kind of lead a conference.
Yep.
What I want to talk about, Jim, because I'm older than you, I'm trying to get now, I've even talked to Chris Palmer about it. I think people that I'll use the word 80, and I've even found a couple older nuns in their 80s. One knew my wife when she was teaching, and I've become friends with them because I'm about their age. But what I want to put together, Archie, is a group of people my age, say, who will just talk about living as we go in the process of dying.
Of course,
I'm,
good
I,
point.
you know what? All this advanced directive and all this other stuff we all know about, or it's available. I want to share, and this would be something to go and have like a living cafe as opposed to a death cafe, and get your
Good.
father-in-law and people like that, and just say, "This is how I get through the day. This
And
is how I
how do you
live."
do it? How do you do it? How
Yeah,
do you do it? Yeah.
because people I'm finding it's like once you tell somebody how old you are, in a way, it doesn't, age is just a number, but older people will start talking about, because it may be because Lee died, but I'm as much aware of dying as I am about living.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's why I'm involved with all this stuff right now, but it's not consuming my life, but it's part of my life. And then
Right.
back to James, I'm using the church as as a part of my life. You know, my friends, it's a community. And that's kind of what I was hitting on when I first brought up with you, Jim, is this wider community out there uh, is there to support you. And somehow, back through the grace of God, it's there, Archie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there. I don't know how. And lastly, I
We got
want
to
to die.
nurture it. We
I
got
want
to
to die
nurture it.
like Pope Francis died. I've got to believe, Archie, those doctors, the little bit that I read about, they didn't rush him to the hospital,
Yep.
no intubation. And Jim, I found this, with my own doctor, with my wife, because I was balancing medication with confusion, and Lee's brain had gone. So there was really
Oh,
no person there as my wife was,
oh.
and I didn't know when she was dying, but she really died in as far as that. But back to Pope Francis is, I've got to believe today, not just those doctors, any progressive doctor or anybody allows that person, and they know they only want to provide comfort care. But as Chris Palmer said, hospice, they want you to live the best day today that you're living. You know,
Good
you're
point. Good
living, not.
attitude.
So I want to find a group, Jim, who will have just this nun has once a month, Archie, a grief, not a grief, caregivers
Mm-hmm.
meeting. So I went to it just to share what I could share, but a caregivers group. I want to see if she'll put a group together of what I don't know what to call it, but people who are older, who are aware of death, but are aware of living, and just see if they'll share, who
Okay.
may or may not have a spouse, but even if they do. Okay.
How about survivors and thrivers?
Well, that could be a good thing.
Gary,
But I'm going to try it on the nun. And if Sister Susan, who knew a nun that I knew that died of cancer, that's my other connection to this church. Strivers and what?
Thrivers. Thrivers. We're thriving rather than wimping and wilting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jim, just so you know, I'm an Episcopal minister and have been for 55 years. I'm still active in the church and got to talk to the one congregation I was supposed to be with this morning. And I said, are you willing? I got some things to talk with you about, because the gospel today is one of the phenomenal ones. Jesus comes back and the people are scared out of their gourds, and doors are locked because they're afraid of the religious and the civil authorities. I'm afraid of the civil authorities right now, big time. So if you don't like it, I'll still tell you I am an anti-Trump person, totally uncommitted, unadulterated. But I got to talk with him about what Jesus does. This is Easter night. He comes into the room, locked up, and the first thing he says is, peace to you.
Peace, yeah.
Peace to you. And he says it 3 times, twice that night, and then he does it the next week. And the interesting thing is that the second time he says it, you forgive sins, they're gone.
Yeah.
And if you don't forgive them, what are you going to do with them? Sort of like Tar Baby, you're stuck with them. And the interesting thing is that Thomas wasn't there. Thomas is a good guy. He's been given a bad rap by a bunch of wimps that don't understand. He wanted to be absolutely connected with Jesus, whom he knew and loved, and knew Jesus knew and loved him. So Jesus comes in and says the third time, peace with you. And it's, and then he says, okay, you want to get real? Here I am. Stick your fingers in the holes in my body. Stick your hand in my side. And that's what I love you, so you can do it. And he does it. And Thomas says, my Lord and my God, and everything fits together for him. That to me is good news. Now, we can do that, but we have the opportunity. You don't have to go to a priest. Don't have to go to a minister. You don't have to go to a therapist to get forgiven. You can forgive other people. You have been forgiven by Jesus already. Whether you like it or not, it's a done deal. And then if we get with the program, we're like another Francis, the one that Francis of Assisi, who says, make me an instrument of your peace. It's not so much that I am loved, but that I be loving. And then it is not in forgiving, it is in forgiving that we are forgiven. So I'm tying that back to Jesus on Easter night, tying it back that there we are forgiven, and we're given the power to forgive others and to let that crap go by and not be stuck on it. And so if we're stuck on somebody, on holding somebody accountable, as I want to hold a certain felon in the White House, I want to hold him accountable. But that's not good for me to stay in an angry mode. He's in an angry mode, and he's tearing America and the world apart to get even. But the good news is we have the power to help others because we have been forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
I have Lisa, I had mentioned earlier, Lisa's father grew up in a Catholic house, but once he had a family and raised a family, they didn't go to any form of religion.
Okay.
They were good people, lived by a good rule, and that was that. So when I met them, and my background was I was raised Catholic. My parents were pretty strict about the Catholic. My father belonged to the Knights of Columbus. My father sang in the church choir. I don't know if I was forced into it, but maybe it was a pride thing. But I ended up being an altar boy. I went to did the first communion. Yeah, you're laughing. But my parish was Holy Angels Parish, Singiac or Little Falls, New Jersey. And my father, I guess I was a troubled kid and kind of been acting up a lot, but I remember my father the pastor at the time at Holy Angels, Roman Catholic, Franciscan, we became friendly. The pastor was invited to the house several times to have supper and stuff. So I became friendly and I learned to serve the Mass. So I learned the Latin Mass.
Wow.
Good for you.
Well, you know what? It was such an eloquent thing. And that was before the Catholic Church turned the altar around. The sacrifice and the priest prior for the altar and Latin Mass, the back of the priest was always facing the congregation. And then in the Catholic Church, when they modernized, if you will, they figured, let's turn the altar around and have the Mass celebration, but we'll face the audience. So what, I had to do all that stuff, and my father was in the choir, so I sang in the choir and everything else. When they changed the Mass from Latin to English, and I had to learn the translation, I thought it was the dumbest thing in this world. The things I had to say and repeat, because I found Latin was so eloquent. And I'll be honest too, in the vestibule, when we would get the garments, all the garments ready for the
Right.
the altar boys would always show up first, and we would have to go in there. We'd have to put our garments on, and then it would be our responsibility to get the cruets for the water and the wine. And
Right.
Oh,
boys being boys, I remember the time we were sitting there in the vestibule, and we go, "Hey, what do you think? You want to taste it?" So we had a taste of the wine. That is the lousiest tasting wine in the world.
They had, it was red, and that was ugly and bitter, and it was probably port.
It's like Gallo. It's like going to the store and buying Gallo.
Yeah, cheap wine.
Cheap wine. And the protocol was the chalice, the gold chalices, the protocol was for the Latin, especially as you would pour the water in. And the water, you could always tell the alcoholic priest, you put the water in and right away it would come up. I would be pouring the wine out of the cruet, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm still pouring, and I'm waiting. And then finally the thing would come up. There was a full chalice of wine, and he would just tank and drink that whole thing down.
He'd
wow.
guzzle it down, right?
I think the priests end up being alcoholics and stuff like that.
Wow.
Why
Of
would
course.
someone take that volume of wine when it's just a ritual, if you will?
Yeah.
No, that to me. But when they changed it to English, there was one phrase we used to say in Latin was when you would ring right around when the host was risen, you
Right.
would the altar boy would have to pick the bells and ring them up. And there was things you would say in Latin. One of there was "Echo Spirit 220."
Yeah.
And when it was changed to English, we went in the vestibule. We used to kill around figuring, like, I guess when we were doing Latin, "Echo Spirit 220" must have been God's phone number. because Little Falls, to call our home phone number, it's 256, which was Clifford 6. So back in 57 and 58, when we were saying "Echo Spirit 220," we were figuring that's God's phone number. So it's funny when you think of being near death and getting to death, and you're talking about having no mortal sin and everything else. I got to think about all those things I was doing as a child growing up and everything about that. When we went to confession, I went to Holy Angels parochial school up to 6th grade. And don't ask me why, but as if by wizardry, in the middle of 6th grade, I show up in Great Notch #2 school in Little Falls, a public school. I actually think I got thrown out of a Roman Catholic school, and even was getting, I remember the nuns would take me out in the hallway, and the habits, I remember they used to beat you. They used to hit you with things.
Wow.
They did a lot of things you couldn't get through.
That's called child abuse.
And there was a funny thing with confession. Now, since you're a minister of the faith, I don't believe, do you have confessions?
Yes.
You do.
Yep.
There was,
Because I know I got stuff, and we can talk about how we do that. But I'm an Episcopalian, so some people say we're Catholic light. I think we're Protestant heavy, so I'm okay.
right. I've heard a similar that they're close to a Catholic, but not quite.
We're good
Yeah.
enough as far as I'm concerned.
We had a funny thing though among us when we went out to play at recess. All the boys, you could
Yeah.
tell the good boys from the bad boys, I guess. And I guess I was hanging with the bad boys. Is we wanted to find out as we're growing up. I went up to 8. Well, it was up to 6, but there was an 8th grade for the Catholic school. We used to want to find out who the girls were that we can maybe make some time with. And
Mhm.
what we used to do is when it was Tuesday or Thursdays was confessions.
Yeah.
We used to intentionally sit about 20 feet away from the confessional.
Listening up, right?
Right?
Listening
No.
up.
Yeah. You know why we did that? Hi, bless me, Father. This is James Tobin. It's been 3 weeks since my last confession. I went out with Patty and I felt her up a little bit, and I went out with this. We used to listen for all the guys with confessions to find out who the girls were that we can make some time with. So I know you're a minister of the church, but you gotta admit that's a devilish
You know,
thing to have in your mind, though.
Archie, I
Lee, so
think
how are you doing with
confession.
listening to True Confessions? I hope you've heard this before.
Yeah, I think I have. I think I blocked it out though.
I, I think
He's really a good guy,
confessions,
isn't he? In spite of all of his confessions.
Archie, I think,
That was a
I
long
mean,
time ago.
Yeah.
I think I'm in really what is this Catholic church in Solon. I don't know what the word progressive, but it's always had chairs. It's on the third priest, and the people have always involved with the church. So I, I think what confession is becoming, since they changed the word from reconciliation, that
Yeah.
means a different thing than confession. And some Catholics I talk to, they haven't been to confession in years. And Archie, the problem that I see is the priest or nobody sits down and tells you anything about confession. You don't get a lesson. Even when I went through the year to become a Catholic, I did go to quote, because a friend of mine told me you'd have to go before you were going to be confirmed, and she was right. But 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 what this priest told me, but I think it's moving in this direction, Jim, that he's not a what is the word, counselor. What are people that do counseling? He's not. But
Therapist,
from
not a
but
therapist.
from a friend of mine, who happens a woman, who goes to another church that I've gone to. She likes to go to confession because that does give her an opportunity to talk with the priest. So I think it's evolved into more of a counseling, and not my other friend who got driven out of the Catholic Church because of too much of birth control, and maybe telling too much that she thought was private. I can't remember, but she's no longer a member of the church. But I think today, I don't know what it's like in the Episcopal Church, but I think confession is more of a relationship. They've taken the screen down. You can do it face to face.
Okay.
I think the church, because if it doesn't change, in my opinion, because it's got to. And that's why even with this progressive church that I'm going to, I want to see why because this priest is open. I mean, anybody can come. He did the same as you did with the peace 3 times, said almost same thing you said, Archie, today. But the altar, Jim, is just a table,
Yeah.
faces. As I said, there's chairs, there's a cross,